Let's talk about how much money you really need to buy a home in Atlanta, Georgia. What's up, y'all? I'm Victor with Living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I put out videos every week about what it's like to live in Atlanta and the surrounding suburbs. We talk about the homes in Atlanta, we talk about the schools and the community. Of course, if you're thinking about moving to Atlanta or you just want to know what it's like to live here, feel free to call, text, or email me anytime. Thank you so much to everyone who has reached out. I'm always happy to help. Right now, we're going to talk about how much you really need to buy a home in Atlanta, Georgia. And there are really two different costs associated with buying a home. There are like the upfront costs for things like a down payment or closing costs. And then there's like the ongoing costs, your monthly mortgage payment, and how much income you would need to be able to afford that monthly payment. So let's talk about both of those aspects of buying a home. Starting with the upfront costs, the two things that really make that up are going to be the down payment and the closing costs. For all of the examples that we use in this video, we'll talk about the average home value of $500,000 in the city of Atlanta. So for an average $500,000 home, the down payment would range between 3% and 20%. Really, you could put more than 20% down for any mortgage payment, but 20 is kind of the typical maximum. So for 3% down payment on a $500,000 home, you're looking at $15,000 for the down payment. On a 20% down payment, it would be $100,000. And then the other aspect of that upfront costs, the closing costs, kind of range a little bit depending on what lender you use. So typically the things that make up the closing costs when you're buying a home are the service of the lender, so the cost of using that lender, the services of the closing attorney, so things like the title exam, title research, transfer tax, all of those things go into the closing costs associated with the closing attorney. And then lastly, it's the prepaids. So when you buy a home and you have a mortgage, the lender is going to make sure that they have an escrow account for things like your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance. And most of the time, they charge like an upfront amount for paying for those things before you even start your monthly mortgage. So usually that ranges from 3 months of insurance and taxes to 10 months of insurance and taxes. So it ranges quite a bit. So let's talk about the lender's fees and the closing attorney's fees. Those are usually about 1% of the purchase price of the home. So for a $500,000 home, you're looking at about $5,000 for the lender's fees and the closing attorney's fees. And then for taxes and insurance, you're looking at about $600 per month for those two things. So if the lender collects 3 months upfront of those two, then you're looking at $1,800 for that part of the closing costs. If they collect 10 months of taxes and insurance, then you're looking at $6,000. So ultimately, how that breaks down is that the closing costs associated with a $500,000 house are going to be between $6,000 and $11,000, depending on how much prepaids your lender collects. Now, pro tip, when you get a pre-approval for your mortgage and your lender sends you like a pre-approval letter and they tells you how much you can afford for buying your new home, they should include an estimate for prepaids. If they don't include an estimate for the prepaids and how much money they're going to collect for the escrow account, you need to ask them to include that. Every lender should be able to give you an estimate for how much they're going to charge for prepaids. So what all of this math boils down to is that the minimum down payment would be 3%, which would be $15,000 for a $500,000 home, and the minimum closing costs would be about $6,800, which means the minimum upfront costs for buying a $500,000 home in Atlanta is going to be $21,800. Now, many people often ask who pays for the real estate agent commissions. And here in Georgia, it's standard for the seller to pay for both the seller's real estate agent and for the buyer's real estate agent. So this is not something that the buyer would have to worry about. Typically, the buyer does not pay for their own real estate agent. This is settled between the seller and the listing agent before the house even goes on the market. In fact, you can even see on websites like Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com, they usually will post how much the buyer's real estate agent will get paid for that transaction. Okay, so those are the upfront costs when it comes to buying a $500,000 home in Atlanta. Let's now talk about the monthly mortgage payment for a $500,000 home. And there's really two different factors that make a big difference in that monthly mortgage payment. And the biggest thing is going to be the down payment that you put on that home. So for example, if you're using a conventional loan and you're putting 20% down payment, it's going to be a lot less of a monthly payment than if you put down 3.5%. For a $500,000 house, if you put down a 20% down payment, that's $100,000, which leaves you with a $400,000 loan. The principal and interest of that $400,000 loan over 30 years comes out to $2,608 a month. Then, of course, you have the property taxes, which is also paid monthly with your mortgage insurance. Typically, property taxes are about 1 to 1.15% of the value of the home. In this example, we'll use the more conservative 1.15%. Property taxes are going to come out to $480 a month. And then homeowner's insurance. If it's $1,500 a year, the homeowner's insurance would come out to $125 a month. So overall, your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance will come out to $3,213 a month for a $500,000 home. Now, the bank will often tell you that you can use up to 50% of your monthly gross income to buy a home. But of course, that's not really reasonable. I would never suggest you use 50% of your income for your mortgage. Really, it's a lot safer to do 25 to 35%. So let's use the 35% of your monthly income in this example. If your mortgage payment is 35% of your gross income, that means you would need to make $9,180 a month. Multiply that times 12 months, and you would need to make $110,000 a year to afford a $500,000 home in Atlanta. In that example, we're using a 20% down payment, which is really for people who are selling a home and they have already equity built up in that home. So they have that $100,000 to put into the down payment of their next home. If you don't have that equity or you don't have that $100,000 for a down payment, it's super common for people to put down 3.5%. So let's take a look at those numbers if we were putting a 3.5% down payment on the home. For a $500,000 home, a 3.5% down payment would be $17,500, which leaves us with a loan of $482,500. Over 30 years, that comes out to $3,146. The taxes would be $480 a month. The homeowner's insurance would be $125 a month. And because we're only putting down 3.5%, we would have PMI, which would come out to about $225 a month. All in all, for a $500,000 home in the city of Atlanta, you're looking at $3,975 a month. I'm suggesting your mortgage be no more than 35% of your monthly income, which means you would need to make $11,357 a month. Multiply that number by 12 months, and you would need to make $136,000 a year to afford a $500,000 home in Atlanta with a 3.5% down payment. I know that is certainly a lot to think about, and really one of the biggest factors for what kind of down payment you're using or your PMI or your escrow account really comes down to the type of loan that you're getting from your lender. And there are multiple kinds of loans. In fact, there are loans that allow you to do no down payment, 0% down payment, to as high as 20 or 25% down payment. So let's take a look at some of the different loan types and what they mean for you as the buyer. First off, the USDA loan, which allows you to do 0% down payment, is super convenient. However, there are quite a few restrictions with a USDA loan. And one of those is that it only applies to certain parts of the state of Georgia. And the city of Atlanta is not one of those parts. The USDA loan is really for like the rural parts of Georgia. In fact, there is a website. I'll put the link to the website in the description of the video, and you can see the map of the state of Georgia where the USDA loan is eligible. Again, it's not really in the city of Atlanta. It's not even in the suburbs of Atlanta, but if you're looking far out enough, you would be able to be eligible for a USDA loan. And then there's also one more major restriction for the USDA loan. You also have to be making less than $103,000 per year to be eligible for the USDA loan and the 0% down payment. This next loan type is the FHA loan. And the FHA loan is really for people who are just starting to build their credit or who are working on their credit, because it allows you to have a credit score as low as 580 to be eligible for an FHA loan. The trade-off is that you would have to have PMI for that FHA loan. PMI is private mortgage insurance, and this is the way that the lender kind of offsets the risk of the FHA loan. Many lenders kind of view an FHA loan as a more risky loan, so they use PMI to kind of counter that. But it allows you to get a mortgage at a credit score of 580, which is super beneficial for many people. Not only would you be eligible for the FHA loan, but you can put down 3.5%, which is super convenient. And then the next type of loan is the conventional loan. This is really the most common kind of loan, and you can put down as low as 3% to 5%. It really just depends on the lender and the programs that that lender has. Every lender is different, so there isn't like a normal minimum. It just kind of depends on the lender. For a conventional loan, the minimum is between 3 and 5%, and the minimum credit score is about 620. For some lenders, it might be 630, 640, but there are plenty of lenders who will provide a pre-approval with a credit score of 620. Keep in mind that to be eligible for a conventional loan, your debt-to-income ratio has to be less than 50%. This means that all of your monthly debts has to be no more than 50% of your monthly gross income. And then lastly, there's the jumbo loan. The jumbo loan is very unique. It is considered a non-conforming loan because it is not backed by Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and there aren't nearly as many restrictions on a jumbo loan. For the most part, jumbo loans are really only for people who are trying to get a loan of more than the maximum allowed limit for a conventional loan. Today, that number is $726,000. So if you need a mortgage for more than $726,000, a jumbo loan would be the way to go. Again, each lender is very unique. Each lender would have their own different programs for jumbo loans and their own set of restrictions. So if you are looking for a jumbo loan, talk to your lender about the restrictions or the minimum requirements for that loan. Thanks so much for watching to the end of the video. If you want to know more about what it's like to live in Atlanta, Georgia, check out this video. I'll see you there.